I'm gonna take this 2021 Nissan Armada, which isn't anyone's first choice to tackle tough terrain, and see if I can come up with a plan to improve its off-road capabilities. Hey everybody, Ethan here. Welcome to Hello Road. So you might remember last year I bought this 2021 Nissan Armada SL to tow our travel trailer and to haul around extended family when they're in town. Now, I'm actually not a big fan of SUVs. I've driven so many of them and have never really fallen in love with any of them. But I have to say that I've really been enjoying this Armada. It is an excellent tow vehicle. It's super comfortable, it's got good technology, and it's really quiet on the inside. It's just the fuel economy is pretty terrible, but I knew that going in. Thankfully, I'm not commuting in this thing. Click above to watch my full review of this Armada. So you might be wondering, why would I take a vehicle that I've really been enjoying and mess with it, especially a vehicle that isn't exactly known for its off-road prowess? This is a great question, and to be honest, I'm not really sure I have a good answer, but today, let's talk about it. Now, a lot of people modify their vehicles in an attempt to improve their off-road capabilities. The overlanding trend is still hugely popular. Even car companies are getting in on the action and creating off-road packages for their popular mainstream SUVs. Slap on some all-terrain tires, maybe a lift, a skid plate, some fancy badges, and voila, instant off-road machine. Sometimes the upgrades truly improve performance in the dirt. Other times, it's little more than aesthetics. And you know what though? I actually like the Overland aesthetic. Even if the capability doesn't quite match the looks. I like how big chunky off-road tires look on a vehicle, even if it is partially off-road cosplay. And for me, I'm not planning on building a rock-crawling Armada or something that can tackle double black diamond trails. I'm fine with the middle ground here. I want a basic setup that improves our off-road capabilities so we can get to places that ordinary vehicles might not attempt to go and feel confident that we can handle some moderate trails. And I don't really want to sacrifice a lot of the things that I like about the Armada. I still want to be able to tow safely and efficiently, and I don't want to mess up the really good ride comfort. This is going to get used for towing and hauling around extended family most of the time, so it still needs to be good on pavement. And you might be wondering why I'd even bother doing this with a Y62 generation Armada. There's very little aftermarket support for them. They don't have locking diffs. Aren't they just kind of like a soccer dad SUV? Maybe I should have just bought a Toyota Land Cruiser? Well, I didn't want to spend 60 grand on a similar mileage in model year Land Cruiser. This thing was only about 25K, and I kind of like being a little bit different, and I'm interested to see how well an Armada can do with some minimal upgrades. And there is some off-road DNA here. This is based on the world market Nissan Patrol, a vehicle celebrated in Australia and the Middle East for its off-road prowess. And Nissan dialed it way back for the North American market with a different suspension setup geared more for comfort and luxury than serious ability in the dirt. But we do still have four-wheel drive as an option here, and the factory traction control system is pretty good. Even though the same year Patrol got a massive 10.7 inches of ground clearance, we've got a very decent 9.2 inches here, and that's actually more than a similar model year Land Cruiser or Lexus GX. The approach and departure angles of this facelift model are better than earlier Armadas, but still not quite as good as the Patrol. I've seen some people with modified bumpers up front to improve the angle, but not as easy to do back here with a big tow hitch. So ultimately, yeah, an Armada isn't probably the first choice for an off-road vehicle, but it's not a bad choice. And to be honest, if I just want to tackle easy to moderate trails, I don't really think I need to change that much. The most important thing to me here are the tires and the wheels. I'm leaning towards not doing a lift kit for a couple of reasons. First, I still frequently cart around my older parents, and I don't want to make it completely impossible for them to get in and out of this vehicle. And the suspension setup on the Y62 Armada presents some camber alignment issues if you try to lift it. There are a few companies that have good workarounds to this, but those kits can be pricey. I mean, maybe I'd do it if one of those companies wants to sponsor a video. I'm looking at you, All Dogs Off-Road. Give me a call. And I'm not sure about the running boards. My parents do use them to get in and out of the vehicle. Heck, even I use them, but I'm wondering how often they'll get scraped on the trails. What do you think? I'm also considering a roof rack to improve our storage capacity, but I'll probably cover that in a future video. All right, so back to what I'd argue is the most important and cost-effective way to improve a vehicle's off-road abilities, a great set of all-terrain tires, which is definitely what I do not have here. Currently, I've got these off-brand street tires with 20-inch wheels, which are totally fine for street driving. But to really make a big difference in rough terrain, it's best to go with a smaller wheel paired with slightly larger tires, and those larger tires will provide increased tire sidewall flexibility, potentially improved ride comfort, and obviously better protection against punctures and damage from rocks and terrain. So I'm going to downsize the 18-inch wheels so I can gain more sidewall. And I've been lucky enough to partner with Firestone, and they provided a set of all-terrain tires for this build. And while I was totally tempted by the completely hardcore and off-road focused Destination MT2, I opted for the Destination XT, which is touted as having excellent off-road traction with an aggressive open shoulder design, but it still delivers fantastic traction on pavement, even in the rain. Now, this Armada obviously won't be a purpose-built off-road machine, so on-pavement performance is just as important to me as off-road capability. And that's why I opted for this tire. And in my opinion, the tire just looks really cool. Now, when it comes to sizing, I'm not quite ready to start cutting apart my bumpers or wheel arch liners. To keep the overall diameter almost identical to stock, I went with 275/70/18. So when it comes to wheels, there really aren't that many wheel options in the 6x5.5 bolt pattern and the offset that I was looking for. The stock wheel offset is something like 45 millimeters, and I wanted the wheels to stick out a bit further than stock. So I ended up with these gunmetal gray Black Rhino Outback wheels. I think they look pretty sick, and no, this is not sponsored. I paid for these and they were not cheap. So these are 18 by 8.5, and I went with a 0 offset so they would stick out a bit more. All right, so before I head over to the tire shop and get these wheels and tires mounted, I'm going to do a quick sanity check to absolutely ensure that my wheel selection will fit. I confirmed this several times on several websites, but nothing is better than checking for yourself, right? Okay, it looks like it should be fine. It certainly sticks out more than stock, but it easily clears the brake and suspension components. All right, let's load everything up and go get these installed. Okay, new tires are on. Let's do a quick before and after. Yeah, so overall, I'd say it has a bit more of an aggressive look. It looks a bit more sinister, not quite as much like a soccer dad mobile. And yes, for an off-road machine, it is a bit low slung, but it does have 9.2 inches of ground clearance, like I mentioned before, so that's not terrible. And yes, these tires do look very aggressive. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do on the dirt as well as on pavement. And like I said, I went with that 0 offset wheel, so they stick out just a tiny bit. It's nothing crazy, but it definitely looks a lot better than stock, in my opinion. Overall, not a major change to this vehicle. I do think it's going to have some pretty significant advantages in the dirt versus what it did before, but it basically just looks like an Armada with some off-road tires and some nice wheels. And that's pretty much what it is. But this is a work in progress, so there's some other updates I'm going to do here eventually. Okay, so now we need to take this thing for a drive and see how it feels on the pavement, and then head over to my favorite off-road playground and test out the capabilities of my 4x4 Armada with minimal modifications, basically just this set of Firestone Destination XT tires. All right, so it's a few days later and I've got about 1,000 miles on these tires because we took a trip out to Death Valley National Park, towed our travel trailer, and that was my first experience with these tires. I was a little bit concerned with the noise, how loud were these things going to be on pavement, and I'm happy to report that they're only just like a tiny bit louder than those crappy street tires that I had on this thing. These are also E-rated tires, meaning that they're great for towing. I didn't have any issues towing with this thing. Everything felt just as stable as it did before. Now, in terms of ride comfort, it's actually a little bit better than it was before because I went down to 18-inch wheels from those 20-inch wheels, so I've got more sidewall. It's a little bit squishier, so it definitely soaks up some of those big bumps in the road better than the old setup did. So overall, on the pavement, super happy with this new wheel and tire combination. So let's talk about the real reason why I wanted these tires for off-road driving, getting my truck a little bit dirty. So we headed out to Death Valley and we decided that we would go on an easy trail to test everything out. Since it was just us, we only had one vehicle. I did bring a bunch of recovery gear just in case, but luckily we did not need any of that stuff. But I wanted to take it easy because we were by ourselves and because I didn't really know how an Armada would do on an off-road trail. And overall, traction was incredible. The four-wheel drive system in this vehicle is really quite good. Yeah, it wasn't a very difficult road, but we definitely needed to take advantage of the high ground clearance of this Armada. There were quite a few spots where we would have scraped if we were driving a much lower vehicle. So that was a good way to sort of dip our toe into the off-roading world with this Armada, considering the fact that all we did was add wheels and tires to this. No skid plate, no lift kit, nothing like that. So now that I'm confident it can do an easy trail, let's take it onto something a little bit more difficult. Let's take it over to one of my favorite off-road playgrounds that's near my house. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying something a little bit more challenging for this Armada. All right, we're on some dirt. Let's put it into 4 high. Obviously this little section of the road is very easy, but let's see if we can make our way a little bit further to the more difficult section. So this is a really steep drop that kind of like meets in the center in a really steep uphill. So it kind of does a pretty good job of testing out the approach and departure angles of a vehicle. And there's not a whole lot of traction right there. So it'll also test out this four-wheel drive system on this big, heavy Armada. Let's see how it does. 3, 2, 1, go. It's making its way. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah. Feel the power of the V8. This is the first time I've ever taken this thing on any type of difficult terrain. All right, so let's head back down. Remember, I do not have any kind of like fancy brake control on this Armada. It's just all pure right foot talent. Now, in a lot of vehicles, I'll get wheels in the air. I wonder if that will happen here. It just feels so weird driving a vehicle this big down a road like this. All right, this actually was pretty easy for this thing. Now let's see if we can power our way out. Oh, that was a piece of cake. I'm pretty happy with that. One more time because I'm enjoying this so much. Maybe I wasn't actually in 4 low. I actually didn't switch it to 4 low, I'm an idiot. I got up that hill in 4 high, so hopefully this will be a little bit easier. Let's try this again. This time we'll be in 4 low. Let's do it again. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, it's just destroying this hill. So easy. So I'm officially an idiot because I wasn't actually in 4 low the first time around, but I'm just glad that this thing made it up there in 4 high. So I'm kind of wondering, like, is this actually a good off-road platform? Maybe I'm not an idiot for choosing this vehicle to do stuff like this. I'm impressed. Yeah, I gotta say that the tires have a lot to do with how this is working out for me. But yeah, really impressed with this Armada. All right, so I've said it a few times in this video already, but I'm really impressed with this vehicle. The four-wheel drive system and the factory traction control is pretty darn good, even without a locking differential. And these tires are honestly just fantastic. So yeah, wheels and tires, all I've done so far, but what do you think I should do with this vehicle in the future? Should I add a locking differential, like an air locker? Should I remove those running boards? I haven't scraped anything yet, but chances are I might. And I do think that I'm going to get a roof rack for this thing, so I have a whole lot more storage on the roof of this vehicle for camping gear, that kind of stuff. I was a little bit nervous about the lack of a skid plate, so that might be the next thing that I do. So who knows how much time I'll actually have to take this vehicle on roads like this. But with these tires, I think it's likely that I'm going to be doing it a lot more than I had been. All right, that's going to be it for today. What else do you think I should do with this vehicle? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you want to help support the channel, please buy a Hello Road t-shirt or hat at helloroad.tv/shop. Thanks for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.